Let's dive into the comments on my videos on colorism in the modeling industry. A lot of comments were bringing up this tweet from Versace that ignited a hailstorm of backlash and online discourse. This is the tweet in question. Many of you think he was trying to say what I covered in this video, but I can't really speak for his intention. Jay is a Vine star turned music producer. He doesn't work in the modeling industry, so I don't think he should be expected to speak about this industry with expertise, but I absolutely can understand how his statement could have been interpreted as being prejudiced with his wording of looking extremely African. Rather than branding him as xenophobic, I would rather give him the benefit of the doubt that he was picking up on some things I discussed and hastily tweeted something without thinking about the implications. The fashion industry is so insular and hyper-focused on itself, but what is going on within the small universe eventually bleeds into the mainstream. It reminds me of the cerulean belt monologue from The Devil Wears Prada, but in this case, the preference for South Sudanese models on the runway also makes its way to fast fashion brands and other parts of the industry, to where someone like Jay Versace would start to notice how only a specific phenotype is being used in advertising. I was watching a video from a creator named Mayowa where she argued that South Sudanese models were not in fact dominating the modeling industry based on how many light skin versus dark skin or South Sudanese models that IMG, Wilhelmina, and Storm had on their boards. Despite those select few agencies she looked at not having 20% of the models being South Sudanese, that doesn't reflect which models are getting booked. An agency can have whatever configuration of different ethnicities on their board, but what matters is who is actually booking the jobs at the moment. One thing I absolutely agree with her on is that if we look beyond the past few years, light-skinned models absolutely had a huge advantage over dark-skinned models. This is a huge part of why I have a problem with the current trend of South Sudanese models in the fashion industry, because I do not want them to go away in a few years when they are no longer the look of the moment. Skin color should not be a trend. I have to reiterate that a lot of these trends come at the hands of casting directors who will develop relationships with certain smaller agencies and cast a bunch of models from them for a few seasons, and then that shapes the modeling landscape. In the near future, South Sudanese models will stop getting booked. Anak Yai and Adu Dekech will be fine, a few others as well, but there will be a new look of the moment. That brings me to this comment, asking why there are no Middle Eastern models on the runway, even though Paris is full of people from the Middle East. I've said it before and I will say it again. After the South Sudanese trend is over, Middle Eastern models are next. They are so hated at the moment by European designers, but I think it's only a matter of time when the Middle East will become the next area exploited for models. I recently spoke to a booker from another agency, and they were telling me how much difficulty they were having getting work for one of their Egyptian models, clients saying that it looks like they found the model in a souk in Marrakesh. Islamophobia runs rampant across the fashion industry, but so many clients shopping for luxury goods are from wealthy Middle Eastern nations. Just like how it went with South Sudanese models, I think the first big names will come from Western nations. Most likely some French Algerian or French Moroccan models will break through in a big way, get into the top 50 and start making a lot of money. But then scouts will be going to poor towns in the Middle East and North Africa to feed the demand for models who will be less likely to have someone advocating for them and also feel less empowered themselves. The reason casting directors love booking directly with these smaller agencies is because they can pay the models less than from a big agency in Europe or the US. And that small agency will be grateful because they're still making a bigger cut of the commission. The Middle Eastern models who live and grew up in Europe will get overlooked and underbooked. Several of the comments fall under the umbrella of exoticism, and that is definitely at play here. This comment said it very well. They're not admiring their skin, it's placing them on a pedestal to be gawked at because they're so dark. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of the human zoos in the 19th and 20th centuries, like at the 1897 Brussels International Exhibition. Belgian King Leopold II had 267 Congolese people put on display. There are people alive today who could have attended the 1931 colonial exhibition in Paris, where entire fake villages were set up with people from Senegal, Dahomey, the Congo, and other colonized countries. Today's version is rooted in the same idea. Look at how different, look at how dark they are. Wow, it must be so amazing for them to come from their sad, primitive lives and get to experience civilized society. This happened with supermodel Iman. She was a university student in Nairobi, spoke 5 languages, but in order to sell her to the fashion world, photographer Peter Beard, the man who discovered her and launched her career, created a mythology that was gobbled up by the press.
Somebody just said this to me yesterday. Well, you know she was discovered when she was herding goats.
I know.
People still believe that, Iman.
I know. And when I came here, I was not only majoring in political science, but I spoke 5 languages.
Thank you very much. You spoke 5 languages. What are the 5? I'm curious.
First, Somali, Arabic, Italian, French, and Swahili.
Yeah, I speak English and Pig Latin. But I mean, that was a story that was put out, and so that's sort of been disputed, but I'm amazed at how many people still remember that.
This exoticism is contributing to the current push for South Sudanese models because they aren't a common black like the one you can find in your cities. These ones are separate from us. This dehumanizing mentality is so dangerous because it not only opens the door to exploitation, it sanitizes the exploitation under the guise of, well, they should be grateful. This is better than wherever they came from. I did get some comments that fall under this category about how it's an opportunity for the refugees, so we shouldn't complain, how it's their time now, but considering how many models come for Fashion Week, work for months, and leave without making any money and often return with debt to their agency, I do not consider that to be such a great opportunity. They're not given permanent visas to move and work and study. They're brought in, shipped back if they don't book anything, and erased. I don't think most people outside of the fashion industry fully understand how a model can come for Fashion Week, book multiple shows, spend hours at castings, fittings, shooting editorials, booking jobs, but after 2 months, get sent back home with nothing because their expenses were higher than their earnings. Hair was a focus on many of the comments, and I absolutely agree with this observation. The majority of dark-skinned models, male and female, have their hair bald or very short, and there is more than one reason for it. From a practical perspective, most of the hairdressers do not have the training to work with textured hair. They couldn't tell you the difference between 4A and 4C hair, so rather than educating themselves, the responsibility is put on the model to remove the hair from the equation. How most of these fashion jobs work is that a team is hired rather than individuals. For example, the most powerful team in fashion is Steven Meisel as the photographer, Pat McGrath as the makeup artist, Guido Palau as the hairstylist, Carl Templer as the fashion editor, but that role changes the most frequently. Typically, it's the photographer who has their people they want to work with, so the model's hair requirements are not factoring into that equation. Now for some personal experience. In January 2020, a model I scouted was booked as a Prada exclusive, so I spent a few days in Milan as his chaperone. For those of you who may not be working directly in the industry, Prada is infamous for giving models a hair makeover, having a very specific look for that season, regardless of the ramification for the model's other jobs. That season, it was made explicit that if any model cut their hair for Prada, they would be dropped from their option for Givenchy and Louis Vuitton. This type of manipulation is absolutely intentional. It is Prada flexing their power over the industry, making sure that the other designers know that they are at the top, and as a model, you don't really have a choice. You have to go with the job that is supposed to have the biggest impact on your career. Anyway, the hair look that they were going for on the male models that season ended up being very much already what my boy Patrick already had, so no big deal there. But for several of the models, they had huge transformations. Prada even made this video following another one of their exclusives during the week with his haircut. When I was backstage on show day, when they were doing these big transformations, there was one thing that became extremely clear. This vision they had for the look that season, black models weren't even considered. They were just there to be black, and no one was paying any attention to any of them. There was no makeover for them. All the black models were just sitting in a group while everyone else was fussing over the hair of the white and Asian models. There was no attempt to translate that hairstyle into different hair textures. They were just there for their skin color. With the dark-skinned female models, the issue of their hair is more prevalent. No braids, no locks, no weaves, just bald or buzzed short. When they do use wigs, they are often cheap, synthetic, poorly styled wigs because the teams are not interested in working with someone who specializes in textured hair or wigs for black women. Hair has so much cultural importance in the role of femininity, so not allowing these black models to have anything besides short hair is neutering them. I saw this editorial a few days ago, and it perfectly encapsulates a lot of what I spoke about in my previous videos. This model is actually from Senegal, and for reference, here's what she actually looks like. Here, her skin has been desaturated, darkened, her eyes are not showing, basically all human features have been removed, she is just there as a black backdrop for the jewelry. The problem isn't this specific shoot, it's the repetition of this over and over again, perpetuating this visual narrative. Now let's talk about colorism and the idea of the correct color of black. This person commented on, despite having two black parents, their booker said they weren't dark enough for what the casting directors were looking for. Someone else said how they were told by a casting director that their skin color makes them look cheap. There are so many different skin tones of black people, blue undertones, yellow undertones, different shades amongst siblings, even with the same parents, and that is why this narrow selection for only the darkest skin is so infuriating. Limiting the accepted tonal range just means there are less beautiful models being booked. The darkness of the color is valued over beauty. These videos are more about black models, but the same can be true on the flip side, fair-skinned models being booked over ones with darker skin. I dealt with this recently with one of my models, mixed-raced, whose agency emailed me about how he came in for digitals and was looking excessively tanned. This led to a back and forth with me saying, how dare you police the acceptable blackness of my black model, them saying he looks burnt in comparison to his skin in the winter, showing their ignorance of the range of color that light-skinned and mixed-race models can have during different times of the year. They apologized, promised they weren't being racist, but I spoke to my model and we both agreed that it was best if we ended his reputation with that agency. I don't think they were being malicious, but rather they didn't understand how offensive it was what they said, how they made the model feel about his skin when he came into the agency, and they were showing their dissatisfaction over his color of skin. Whether a model is mixed race, light skin, dark skin, but not dark enough, I want the industry to get to a place where the skin tone is not the deciding factor of whether or not they are getting booked. Thank you to everyone who commented on my videos about colorism. Let me know what experiences you've had in the fashion industry that can add to that conversation.